Hello and welcome to Story Hour with Miss Barbara. On this cold, rainy Christmas night, I have a story for you from an old friend of mine named Duncan Williamson. And I heard this story from him when I was visiting his barrackit, his little tent he had put up with my best friend, Linda, in Scotland. And this is a very special story for Christmas night. The old collie was tired. He had been wandering about the village, around and around several times, all day, and he was not having much luck. And as he pondered that, he realized, why, it's Christmas Eve. Everyone must be inside their houses, getting ready to celebrate Christmas, setting up their tree and such. So he knew he wasn't going to have much luck finding any food. Now, this collie didn't really have an owner anymore. He was kind of an old collie who wasn't useful anymore and had been discarded by his master, but he had been gladly accepted by all the people in the village. He was friends with the children and the old folks and the farmers and their wives and even all the animals of the village. And so he had no trouble getting a bit of meat here and a bit of scrap of food there from the different people in the village. But today, he was not having any luck. And it was because it was Christmas Eve and no one was out and about. And as he wandered the village, it started to get dark. And he thought, I wonder what I could do for a bite to eat. He could see through the doors of the people's houses that they were putting up their trees and they were glowing with candlelight. And he was starting to feel lonely on top of being hungry. So he thought, I know what? I'll go see my old friend, the Peacock. Maybe he'll have a scrap left in his bowl that he could share with me. So he wandered over to this large bungalow that was owned by a merchant in the village. And that merchant also had a peacock and a peahen. And so the old collie went through the hedge and round the back, and there he found his old friend the peacock sitting on a post. Well, hello there, he says to the peacock. Ah, it's you, is it, my friend, old collie? And the collie said, Yep, it's me. And how are you faring this night? Says the peacock. Not too well, says the collie. It's kind of a strange night. Everyone's in their houses getting ready for Christmas and to celebrate the coming of our Savior. Yes, I agree, said the peacock. It's a night like no other. And I've just been sitting here. My master and his wife are inside getting ready for Christmas and putting up their tree. And my wife is in the coop sitting on her one egg she's been sitting on since summer. And me, I've just been sitting out here looking up at the stars and the moon. Yeah, says the collie, it's a night like no other. And the peacock says, everybody's inside celebrating, but do you think everybody has something to celebrate with? And the collie thought about it and he said, actually, I don't think everyone does. I know a widow who lives down at the house at the end of the village who I think doesn't have much to celebrate tonight. She has no fire. I went by there an hour ago and it was dark, and she probably doesn't have any food. Yeah, says the peacock, it's sad. She It's just not fair how some people have so much and others have nothing. I know, says the collie. I wish there was something I could do to help her. Well, says the peacock, we're two smart guys. I think between us we should think of something we could do. It'd be nice to give her a helping hand this Christmas. You're right, says the collie. Well, what are those Pete's doing there on the porch? Oh, those are my masters, says the peacock. I bet just two of those, would make a beautiful fire for the widow. I agree, says the peacock. And I don't think he would miss two if they happened to disappear. Just then, who should come walking along but the village tomcat. He was a big black cat that nobody owned, and just like the collie, he wandered around and got scraps of food here and there, and everybody in the village knew him. And he was friends with the collie and the peacock. And he comes along and he says, "Oh, I see you two are chatting away this evening and discussing things. I wonder what problem you're trying to solve now." "Oh," says the collie, "we were just discussing this night and how some don't have as much as others with which to celebrate. And," says the peacock, "we were coming up with a plan that we would bring two of these Pete's to her house and get her a nice warm fire going." "Oh, that sounds wonderful," says the cat. "Let me in on this problem-solving mission too." Okay. The cat says, "I bet she doesn't have any food." "You're right," says the dog. "I bet she doesn't." "Well, I know the secrets in town here. I know at the butcher shop there's a secret way to get in. And there's always a tub of bones and scraps for me in there. But I also know that he has lots of sausages hanging up. I never take any because the scraps are good enough for me. But I bet he wouldn't miss a string of sausages if one disappeared." "And well," says the cat, "I have my tricks too. I know a secret way into the fish parlor, and there's lots of stuff in there besides the scraps that I usually take. There's kippers and all kinds of fish. I could go and get that." So the collie and the peacock and the cat worked out their plan, and the peacock would meet them with his two Pete's, one under each wing, and the dog would come back from the butchers, and the cat would come back from the fishmongers, and they would go to the widow's and bring that to her. So there they went down the street. The cat with his kippers across his mouth. He was a big cat. And the dog with the string of sausages carefully hanging down his mouth, holding them up high so they wouldn't touch the ground. And then the peacock with the two Pete's under his wings. And along they marched through the village, and not a soul noticed them because they were all inside tending to their Christmas celebrations and getting ready for their Christmas dinner. And when the three of them marched down the street and they got to the widow's door and her gate, there was an owl sitting on the post of the gate. And he says, "Too-hoo, too-hoo, where are you going?" And they said, "We've brought these treats." And the dog was careful not to let the sausages drop. "For the widow." "Oh, Too-hoo, let me come with you. Let me come with you," says the owl. And so they marched through the gate. First the dog, then the cat, then the peacock, and last of all the owl on his little feet. And they got to the door, and the dog knocks, scratches, scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch. No answer. So he tries again. Scritch, scratch, scritch. Finally, they hear some footsteps from inside, and the old widow comes to the door, and she opens it, and a big smile spreads across her face, and she says, "Oh, my children, what a pleasant surprise that you have come to pay me a visit on Christmas." And she opened the door, and in they marched. First the dog, then the cat, then the peacock, and at last of all the owl. And she walked up next to the fireplace, and there the dog laid down his sausages, and the cat laid down his kippers, and the peacock laid down his two peats, and the owl just kind of flapped his wings. And she said, "Oh, my children, this is just wonderful. You've brought me some Christmas." And she picked up the two peats, and she went to the fire and raked together the smoldering coals and put the peats on top. And she picked up the sausage and the fish, and she says, "You just wait right here, and I'll be back with some food for all of us, and we can celebrate Christmas together." And she went in the kitchen, and the dog and the peacock and the cat were sitting there with the owl. And the dog says, "It's kind of sad, but she doesn't even have a Christmas tree to celebrate with. And I guess it's just be impossible for us to get a Christmas tree for her." And the peacock says, "Oh, I don't know about that. I think I could give her a Christmas tree better than any that she could get anywhere else." "Oh, really?" says the dog. "Yep," says the peacock, "you just watch." And he says to the owl, "You didn't bring any present, but you have some nice glowing eyes. Here, you sit up on the back of the chair here next to the fireplace." And he says to the cat, "Now you have some glowing eyes too. You sit on the other side by the fireplace." And then the peacock spread his wings and made a fan, and he placed himself right in front of the fire and spread it out between the cat and the owl. And they could hear the old widow in the kitchen humming away. And pretty soon she comes in through the doorway with two plates, one of sausages she had cooked and one of kippers. And she sees the beautiful display of the peacock with the firelight shining through his beautiful colored wings. And she said, "Oh, my children, you brought me a Christmas tree, and it's just wonderful." And this happy glow came over all of them. And she said, "Here, you sit down." And she got a little bowl for each one and gave them some sausages and kippers. And she sat down and they ate their Christmas dinner together. And then she sat and told them stories until she was just too tired anymore. And she said, "My children, it's time for me to go to bed. But I just want to thank you for a most wonderful Christmas." And then her little friends went out the door, one by one, the dog and the cat and the peacock and the owl. And she quietly closed the door and said, "Merry Christmas to all." And they went away, past all the houses celebrating their wonderful Christmas dinners, and they realized that they just shared the best Christmas of them all. And that's the story of